Hey, what's up guys? Jordan here, and this video, I just have to kind of get it off my chest because I'm getting really frustrated as a listener, as a fan of music, but also as an engineer and producer. I'm just getting really annoyed of all the crappy productions that are coming out these days. And honestly, I can't really think of like the last really cool heavy record that I heard come out. And it's frustrating, again, just as a fan of heavy music. I'll be honest with you, I don't listen to a ton of hardcore and metalcore and stuff anymore. And the ones that I do listen to are kind of the same bands that I liked 5, 10 years ago, and I still listen to the same records. But over the past few months, it's just like I wanted to make this video because I've been hearing records come out from bands that I was excited to hear, or maybe new bands that I've heard good things about. And I go and I listen to their records, and I can barely even get through it because of the production. And it's frustrating. Like, I want to like these bands. It seems like the songs are good, but the record and the mix is just like unlistenable. And it's very frustrating. It's very annoying. And I think it's why, and I think this video is going to be important for you to watch as an engineer producer. If you want to have a long-term career in this business, there's some things I'm going to talk about here that I think are going to be really important for you. So here's the reason why I think so many heavy productions, metalcore, hardcore, whatever, here's why I think they've been really sucking lately. And not all of them, but most of them. And I've been disappointed enough times to inspire me to make this video, because even just the other week, a new record came out that I was really excited to listen to, and I don't even want to listen to it because of how it sounds. Now, what I'm talking about here is just like, everything is just being overdone, and especially the drums. And I touched on this in a recent video, but to me, it's like mixers and engineers, producers, I don't know who along the line at different records is responsible for it, but they're just completely killing the vibe and the production with the way that the drums sound. And mostly it's because they don't sound like drums anymore. It just sounds like, I don't know, it's like you're trying to make every single dang snare hit sound like a cannon shot or a gunshot, and the kick just sounds like, it doesn't sound like a kick drum anymore. It just sounds like you're like, I don't know, hitting a metal bar against like a plastic wall or something. I don't know, like it doesn't sound like drums, and they're so so loud in the mix that it's all you can focus on. It's taking away from everything else. And I don't know, just this aggressiveness that is well-intentioned, but actually is just annoying for the listener. And that's what I'm hearing, is just these overblown drums where it's just like, again, just like every hit is just like trying to be a sledgehammer to your ears. And it's like, it's not fun to listen to. Like, it's just not. And it's almost as if mixers these days in heavy music, and maybe even bands, I don't know, they're trying to stand out by just being purely like the biggest, the loudest, the most intense drums, or even, guitars, bass too, but I think mostly this is coming across in drums. And it's to the detriment of all the people who just want to listen to cool records. Like, newsflash, music fans and the fans of the bands that you're producing and recording and mixing, they're not buying the record to hear your new snare sound and to hear like how intense and dramatic and ridiculous your kick and snare sound. Like, they're buying the record because they like the band and they like their songs and they want to hear that. And I'm so sick of hearing records where within 30 seconds you can tell that this engineer wasn't listening to the songs. He wasn't trying to bring out the best in the songs. He was trying to just make everything as loud and as impactful as possible so that people will be like, wow, those drums sound insane. And it's just annoying. It's annoying as a listener, and it's like annoying being excited for a record and putting it on and having it be unlistenable. Having it just be like this assault on your ears that is, it's annoying. It's frankly is annoying. And I find myself more and more these days having to keep going back to records that I loved like 4, 5, maybe even 10 years ago, because the new one, even sometimes from the same band, is just like unlistenable. And that's one thing, is just like the sounds themselves, especially the drums. And I've got to ask, like, if literally all you're doing is using the same drum samples as everyone else and the same amp sims, and you're just like basically clipping putting these same samples and sounds on your drums and clipping them all like crazy, just literally just clipping and limiting every bus and everything so that everything is loud and intense. And then that is like the core of your mixing. Like, are you really mixing? I think you're kind of just like maximizing. Or like maybe this new term I'm making up right now, miximizing. You're just miximizing. Okay, you're not really mixing. To me, mixing is like hearing a song and be like, oh, that's cool. I need to emphasize that. I need to bring the listener into this. I need to emphasize this transition into the chorus. I need to make this breakdown heavier, and I need to make this part more dramatic. Like, a mixer is trying to emphasize what is there in the song. And if all you're doing is miximizing, like, are you really a mixer? And if all you do are you're just getting these tricks of like how to make things really intense and loud and big and how to solve those problems, then but you're neglecting actually the things that actually make music enjoyable, then like you're not really mixing, and you're not gonna last, because I have a feeling that things are eventually gonna change, because I can't be the only one who's getting annoyed by this. I'm sure that there are other listeners who are not engineers and producers who are just not liking these sounds. And I don't know, there could be a swing the other way. And if you're not actually learning how to mix for real and engineer for real, like, for example, another thing I'm seeing is like, I will like be in contact with bands or whatever, and I will know and see pictures of them like recording in a nice studio, recording the drums like in a nice studio, and with good gear and all that stuff, and good drummers. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm excited to hear what they do. And then the record comes out, and again, all of those sounds are completely replaced. It's way over processed. Every single hit is the same, and it's again a sledgehammer to my head. And it's like, what a waste of time. Like, why don't you just program the drums? Like, why are you even recording? And it's frustrating. And I try every mix and recording I do, I'm trying to, like, unless there's a specific reason why it's programmed or whatever, and that can be fine in some cases, but it's like, you know, like, I don't even want to make it about programmed or samples or whatever. This might be weird coming from me, because you've probably seen videos of how I'm like, you can be aggressive with your stuff. You know, make it hit hard, crank the EQ, like whatever. Yes, put samples. I mix with drum samples for sure. And I edit and all that stuff. But what I'm getting at is, well, I'll touch on one more thing, and that's like, so the sound, especially the drums, is one thing that's really driving me crazy on records these days. The other thing is like just the over editing and the over perfection. And again, this might sound weird, especially if you've taken my courses like hardcore editing or hardcore tracking, and you see how I literally show you how to make, you know, musicians who can't play their parts, I show you how to engineer it so that it sounds like they can play their parts perfectly. And I love really well executed performances and recording, and I want it to be really good. If I'm working on a project, I don't want my name on it unless it is as good as it possibly can be. And that means a lot of times, yeah, recording guitar in tiny chunks and making sure everything is like played perfectly, even if you're kind of like cheating some stuff. And this is the thing, is like, I'm not against that. I'm not against drum samples. I'm not against editing. I'm not against tracking strategies that, you know, make things sound better than they otherwise would. I'm really not against that. But the thing is like, you can't let that take over. And that's what I'm hearing on records, is like, they're putting music and feel and like creativity aside, and they're just making it like computer music. And at a certain point, you become more of a computer programmer than a musician or a producer. And it's not for the benefit of anyone. And it's like, again, while I'm not against these things, I think I can just draw it out for you to make it really simple. And it's kind of like this. It's like, let's say this line here is the quality. This is the quality of your recording, okay? And this is like, it's getting better, it's getting better. You're doing more, you're fixing stuff, you're editing, you're doing tracking tricks, whatever, to get things tighter, heavier, whatever it is. I'll just draw a line here. And it's getting better and better and better the more tricks you're using. So you can think of going on this line here. Let's say you're just starting out here, and then you're learning how to track better and get better sounds. You're learning how to edit, like quantize drums. You're learning how to fix guitar parts. You're learning how to track in pieces and make it you know, sound like the guitar player or bass player is phenomenal when really they can't even play their part. And you're doing all these things, but you get to a point right here, and this is what I'm calling the threshold of improvement. Okay, so right up here, you have this threshold of improvement. And what I mean by that is like as you're doing all this stuff and you're improving the song and improving the production and recording, there comes a threshold where once you go past that, you're actually doing more harm than good. And this is what I want to point out in this video is so many people are overshooting this. So you can use editing, you can use mixing, you can use all these different tracking strategies, a lot of which I teach you how to do in my content. But there has to be taste and discretion involved in that because, again, with all these editing and stuff that we're doing, there's a threshold. There's a point where it's the best it can be, where it is like, you know, to put it simply, it's like, you know, the drums sound amazing, they hit hard. I mean, I don't want drums to necessarily sound like totally raw and like how they sound in a room at band practice. Like I want them to sound polished and nice and crisp. I want to hear everything. I want it to be solid and all that stuff, but I still want it to sound like a drummer playing a drum kit. And I think most people still want that. And so you can get to that threshold where the drums are tight, they're in time, they hit hard, they sound good, they're consistent, but they still sound like a drum kit. And likewise with guitars, they can be tight, they can be in tune, they can be in time, it can be a big tone, but yet it still sounds like someone playing the guitar. And that's what it means to really master these techniques and these editing and tracking techniques and be able to do it in a way that gets you to this point, but you don't go past it to where the point is like you lose all of the stuff that makes music actually moving to people, like the energy, the passion, the feel, you know, the humanity of it. And you just eradicate all that to the point where it just becomes just really stale, unmoving, static, like energy and aggressiveness just coming out of the speakers and doesn't actually move anyone anywhere or make anyone feel anything. And so it's this really important threshold of improvement. And when you go beyond that, whether it's tracking, editing, mixing the sounds, like how big you're making things, how big you're making the drum slam, there's a certain threshold here where it's at the ideal point. And beyond that, you actually get worse and you make it harder to listen to and you make it less appealing to listen to and you actually start making things sound worse. And what I'm seeing a lot of people and hearing a lot of people do, even on big records today, is they're trying, they've gotten to this point and they're trying to like overshoot it. Like they're trying to go here and it just doesn't happen. Like if you overdo it, you don't end up here, you actually end up down here. And that really sucks because people are not going to listen to the record as much. And these days that means like for me, I'm streaming all my music on Apple Music or Spotify. So guess what? A couple albums that recently came out that I was excited to really get into, I'm streaming them 1 or 2 times and then I'm done. So this is how the market's going to guide this. And the records that are going to get listened to the most and most popular, people are going to try to sound more and more like that. And maybe we're in this trend where, to me, people are living more on this side of the equation than on this side. And I think this is going to change because, well, it's either going to go 1 or 2 ways. Maybe I'm wrong because I think it's either going to flip over and people are just, bands and listeners alike, are just going to get frustrated with these sounds and you'd be like, they're just gonna be like, hey, can you just make records that sound like a band again? And artists might respond to that. And if it results in more streams and more sales and more people at shows and all that stuff, then that's the way it's gonna go. Because the only other way I see it going is that, you know, eventually you might as well just be making these records on the computer anyway and not even really having players except for the vocalist. I mean, again, if you're gonna literally sample replace every single drum in the mix and just make every single hit the same and make it so intense that it doesn't even resemble a human or a drum kit at all, then why are you even recording drums? Like you should just stop recording drums and just program it. Like there's literally no difference. In fact, you might get better results from programming it. And you know, same thing goes with bass and guitar too. And so I don't know, it's like when it comes to heavy music, is that where we're going? Are we going to flip into just straight computer mode? And is that what fans want? Is that what they're going to pay to listen to? Or are we going to go back, or maybe not even back, but are we going to stay with records still sounding like a band? And that's what I hope for. And again, it's not like if you've been subscribed to my channel for any length of time, or taken any of my courses, you know that I'm not one of these guys who's like, everything must be natural and organic or real and you can't use any tricks and stuff like that. It's like, I literally do not subscribe to that at all. Like, I love productions that are done like to the nines. I want stuff to sound as good as it possibly can. I want it to be the best possible version of that song. I don't care what's going on underneath the hood, how much of it is real or fake. Like, I literally don't care whether you use auto-tune or drum samples or not. Like, I don't care. What I want is just a great experience as a listener. And that's what's being lost here, is because mixers are trying to prove how cool their drums sound instead of actually just like listening to the song and making it as good as it can be. So that's kind of what I wanted to rant about. And if you want to stick around in this industry for a long time, then you've got to get good at finding this sweet spot. Because a lot of people are just, they're not even taking this journey. They're just getting tips and drum samples and clipping everything and just living here. And as soon as things change, if things ever change, or maybe you just get sick of recording heavy music and you want to record something more, country or something, or you get a big country client or something who wants to come in and you literally have no skills here because all you've done is just throw on a ton of crazy, insane drum sounds and clip everything to the max, and that's all you know how to do. And so that's why with my courses, especially hardcore tracking, I really hammered home the point is like, I want to teach you real engineering. I'm not going to show you these little tricks on how to get a cool heavy metal drum sound. It's like, I want to show you how to record any drum kit and techniques that are going to work in any scenario so that you can actually move with the industry, move with artists, deliver what they want, regardless of what that is, because it's changing over time. And that's what I want for you guys, and that's what I want to provide in this channel. So, again, there's some bright lights. There are still some cool records being made. I really respect bands like Thrice, Every Time I Die. They seem like them and some other bands, like their records, they always sound real and they've never fallen into that trap to try and basically I think bands are falling into this trap too, is because they hear other bigger name bands putting out these records that sound like really over processed and over the top over here. And they're like, we got to do that too. And so they go for these sounds. But I really respect the bands and the artists who are not doing that, and the producers who are not doing that. And guys, the only way you stand out in the industry is to actually stand out. Like, do something different. Don't try to sound like everyone else. And yes, try to sound good and professional and the best you possibly can. But remember, there's a threshold of improvement here. And whenever you're making moves and changing things and whatever, it's like, yes, do that, but make sure it's to the point where it's serving the song and it's providing a better listening experience, and that you're not shooting past this threshold of improvement to where you're actually not improving it anymore by adding heavier drum samples or editing the guitar more or whatever it is, that you're not actually overshooting this and making it worse. For all the extra techniques and fancy tricks that you do, are you actually improving it, or have you got to the point where you're actually making it worse for the listener and the ultimate people who care about listening to this record? So that's my call out to you guys, and I wanted to make this video because, frankly, there's a good amount of people who watch these who are making records and who are going to be making big records. Who knows? There's probably someone, maybe it's you, who's watching this video and you're going to get a chance to make a record with a really big band. And you've got a chance to do something cool, unique, that people love. And yes, be competitive, be professional, make it fit in with where music is at right now, but don't try to focus so much on the tricks and on just the pure loudness and aggressiveness and think that that's what makes you a good mixer. It's not. Okay, there are plenty of records from 20 years ago that sound a lot heavier than the stuff that's coming out now, even though they weren't doing all these tricks and drum samples that we're doing now. So, some things to think about. I'm hoping that I hear some more good heavy music and some more productions that are actually enjoyable to listen to in the coming years. If you're with me on this, if you agree with this, and even if you don't, drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on this video. I'm interested to see what you think about this. And we'll talk to you again later.